What up? What up? What up? It is another episode of the Shark Cove. I'm your host, as always, Emmerich D4U on Twitter. That's Draft for Upside. Look, it's EU Masters. We had it wasn't a strange slate of games. It was kind of strange, but fairly predictable that some of these things could happen. Went back in one of the chats as the lower scores were rolling in and pulled all the data from the last two EU Masters. And you could see that just lower kill totals, unders were something that we looked at in day one. And quite frankly, we get away from it after that. So I don't know. Do we want to bet the unders today? We'll talk about that. We'll find out. Let's go ahead and take a look and see what happened today and recap some of those results, where we were right, where we were wrong, what did we learn, and what do we need to know for tomorrow. Let's see. First things first, bringing this up. Let's take off that live banner right there. Okay, first game on the slate, we had Rogue going against Vitality. Some information that I had missed and was brought to my attention very late. But I think we were able to get it out to most people, is that Leon on Rogue was not playing. It was going to be Beansu stepping in. Beansu, formerly a top laner, has role swapped to support. I don't think this was a big issue because I don't necessarily believe that there were a lot of people on Rogue in the first place going against an LFL team in Vitality. Rogue got off to a really good start in this game. Looked like things were kind of clicking, and then it just kind of fell apart from there. There are some compositional issues with their team, but nothing major. Vitality wins 14-10. That was one that we missed on. I was very open that I could foresee this result being very probable as well. I was trying to will the Rogue win in there. I thought Rogue was going to be kind of bloody if they did win, but they didn't. They lost in 28 minutes, as you can see, and there were just a lot of issues there. A bit concerning for Rogue moving forward. I think they're okay. They've had situations like this before. We've seen teams stumble in that first game, and this is one of the better teams in their group. Then we get into this Intrax Spandu and CZE game, also a sub 30-minute game. This game was just absolute. It was mind-numbing in some ways because it wasn't as if they weren't fighting and trying to get kills at points. They just couldn't kill anybody. They were so close so many times on both sides. You end up with a 9-0 game, massive under hit here, completely eliminating either of these teams, obviously, from being optimal and just kind of crossing off this game. So even, the most bullish of total bettors probably couldn't have foreseen a under 9 kill game. It kind of reminds me of that one Bovada spread where, they had the kill total, I think, under 12.5, and we all hammered it. Some of you got paid. I didn't. They canceled my bet. But, what if this had been one of those games that happened? Crazy, right? So then we get into some of the more high-profile games. We get BDS Academy against Eska. This was a game that I felt like was pretty safe. And, starting this game, Eska did put together a couple different kills and tried to get some advantages. I really like the comp that BDS came out with. The opening play in the top lane to get a kill was fantastic. They played very well. Eska put up a good fight, and I think it is worth noting. But, what you see from some of these minor region teams, from some of these teams that just aren't as good as the competition that they're playing, is when they get out to that early lead, a couple kills early in the game might seem like a lot, and it can be. But if you're not getting anything off of those kills, objectives, towers, or anything on the map, dragons, like I said, objectives, those kills are quickly going to, the advantage you're going to get from them is going to be negated. And that's something that you saw kind of in this game as BES was able to get some of those objectives later in the game. And some of those early kills, the 4-2, 4-3 lead, just didn't mean anything. So BDS took care of business, 15-8. It's an under. This was a total that, if you are believing that some of these games are going to go under, Getting in on some of these spreads and these big games is something that I would recommend. I was able to get in on this one. It was 10.5. And I figured like if BDS beat ESCA within 30 minutes, which is kind of what I thought was going to happen, then, 10.5 kill difference was going to be something that it was just too high for them to overcome. And we were right there. Moving along, the game went out on a limb on this one. I bet the under too, after all these other games went under, but felt like, this could be a spot where we had an upset. This could be a spot where LDLC kind of slipped up. And I think that we saw in the way that they played that they do leave themselves open to a better team going ahead and taking advantage of it. They just keep getting away with these team fights where somehow they escape with just a sliver of health. A lot of it is because they're very good, but in cases like this game, it's because the level of competition that they're playing is so much less. It is something that we saw in the play-in stage with Barca, for as an example, playing some of these minor region play-in teams. When they would get into team fights, they would just be able to win them because they were a better team. They had similar composition, but just better players. And the way that they team fought was just more well put together than their competition. They go up against a team like Bifrost, who is good at team fighting, and they just absolutely made them look silly. They took advantage of that. It's hard to kind of pinpoint that on LDLC, given the pedigree that they have, winning the LFL, beating BDS, beating just about everybody that you can imagine. But I do think that they, are very beatable, and we are going to see them get upset. This game is good for a lot of reasons. We'll go into that, and we'll see who they're playing tomorrow. Then, Bisons did not disappoint with the strange comp. We talked about it yesterday that this could be something that happened. That they would bring out some weird pocket picks. They flex Lucen into the top lane, who was completely ineffective. They have the Ivern mid and a Kog'Maw. There's a lot of aspects of this comp that look, interesting and can do some different things in situations. But UOL was just too good. Reptile had a huge game. They got a couple of resets late in one of those fights. Lurox just got fed early. This entire team was fantastic. Ibo played an amazing game on Ornn. These guys had a pretty decent score, not as good as the LDLC score, but still pretty good. I think they were, at least parts of them may have been in some of the optimals. And then we close it off with a game that I was pretty confident that Fnatic would win this game as a favorite. Playing Bifrost, I actually thought Fnatic looked way better than we could have ever imagined. Well, not necessarily. I think that's a little bit much, but I think Fnatic looked the part of the favorite. I don't think LDLC looked the part of the favorite. I don't think BDSA looked the part of the favorite. I think Fnatic did. And Fnatic, for what it's worth, I think was playing against better competition. They didn't close it out cleanly at the end, but almost everything else in this game was absolute just domination. It was very clean. And, not closing it out at the end was fantastic for a lot of us that had the 3 and 4 stacks for Fnatic. Rux had a huge game on Nami. Support captain takes it down. Absolutely disgusting. Let's hope that doesn't happen again tomorrow. Contests are still pretty good. We had, some openings. There wasn't overlay, but they still didn't fill the contest, so they made them smaller. We still got 5K to first. We just don't have 2,500 to second. We don't have the same type of qualifiers that we did yesterday, but we still have pretty good contests. I think this will probably be the last day of it. Contests are just typically smaller on Saturdays and Sundays because there are other sports going. And this year, EU Masters is not running during the year. They're running Thursday, Friday, and then they're going to have games on Saturday and Sunday. So, this is going to be that last 5K to first. I think tomorrow is going to be a 2K to first, especially if it doesn't fill. So let's take advantage of it. Let's look at the slate. Let's try and figure out what we can do, who's going to do what. That first game, we've got UOL. Unicorns of Love Sexy Edition against Alita, who played a very skirmish-heavy side. Look, this game feels to me like it's a game that you want to get on one side of it. I think that UOL is a deserved favorite. Maybe this number is a little bit heavy. We just did see, LDLC almost lose to this team. I don't think Unicorns of Love are nearly as good, but I don't think that they played their best game today either. I think people will be, still on them. They're a lot more expensive. There's no surprise. Ruby was, I think, the highest owned player on the slate. I talked him up. I looked at a couple projections that people made, and Ruby was the highest in their projections as well. So, look, they fit with just about everybody. It made a ton of sense to play them. I don't think that's going to be the case here, but I think people will try and fit them in. Going back to kind of something that we talked about yesterday and I mentioned earlier, where the day ones tend to be a lower total overall in terms of kills, the second game, the teams do tend to loosen up, and we do see some higher kill totals. So this game might just kind of pop off, and I'm kind of interested at 29.5, possibly taking the over on this particular game. But we move into Phantasm and Gamer Legion. Gamer Legion was the number one team in the Prime League. I talked about them yesterday. They ran through the first half of the regular season almost completely undefeated, getting into the second half, very similar to Rogue. And it kind of fell apart. They even lost in their first playoff series. They lost that Series 2 Tract, and then they were able to sweep them in the finals after going through the bracket, beating Unicorns of Love, as a matter of fact. This team has, some holdovers from the old Gamer Legion. I think Wisdom is still there. That's a name you might know. I do believe in this Phantasm team. I've watched a couple of their games. They play really well. They got really hot towards the end of the season. This is a game that, I think you can take a stab at both of the dogs that we've talked about. However, this game might be on that lower end of the total side, simply because it's the first time these two teams are playing. It's just kind of like jitters getting it through their system. Let's take a look. We got a couple comments. Mildly successful day. Good. Yeah, look, mine was mildly successful too. I'll say it's a success. I lost the qualifiers. Outside of that, everything else went pretty well. And hello to you, Pete. Hello. Moving into the next game, we've got Eska, we've got Fnatic, and just to recap those two bets, I think what we said yesterday is you can take anything, especially above this plus 300. I'm probably going to put a quarter unit on both of these games, but moving into Eska at plus 445, you almost have to if you're doing this from a system standpoint. But I think Fnatic is going to roll here. Hopefully, Eska puts up a little bit more fight than they did yesterday or today, depending on how you want to look at it when you're watching it. Put up a little bit more fight throughout the game than they did against BDS Academy, and maybe just a little bit more overall than what Bifrost did. I think Fnatic smashed this game. They are the most expensive on the slate at this point. They're going to be hard to fit. We're going to have to find spots to fit them. And that brings us to our next game. We've got X7. We've got Carmine. These are two teams that didn't play. Carmine is going to have some big names that you're going to recognize. We've got, obviously, the big one is Reckless as the ADC. A lot of talk right now on how owned Reckless is going to be. I think that he's probably going to be in that Ruby group, like somewhere between 20 to 30%. KC is incredibly inexpensive because they're in this game with X7, who we'll talk about in a second. But, Carmine does have, aside from Reckless, they've got Cabashard. Cabashard is probably going to be one of the best top laners. He's pretty versatile in his champion pool. There's a lot of different things he can play. He can play the Aurelias. He can play the Assassins. And you're going to see him more often on some of those carry-type champions. Where this team has gone wrong in the past is, like a lot of Reckless teams, sometimes, he doesn't show up, but 113, their jungler, has had some good games, but he's had some really, really questionable ones, especially in the playoffs for the LFL. So, we have to look at that. And, the matchup on the other side of the jungle is not one that's easy. In fact, I think you can make a debate that X7 has the best jungler within this tournament. Saken, we know him well from last year. He's a holdover from Carmine Corp, team that won the spring and the summer EU Masters. Still playing the mid lane. not nearly as impactful because he has some of these other, carries around him that are taking away from, that role. X7 has Tempt in the mid lane, and they have Haru. These are guys that have played in the LCK, that have that pedigree. And this X7 team was fantastic in the NLC, absolutely dominant. We talked about it yesterday. I'm picking X7 to win this game at plus 105. I've already put a unit on that. I might double down, and I don't think that this is a surprise. I've looked around. People obviously think Carmine Corp is good, and they are. They played very well in the play-ins. But I do wonder, the fact that they had to go through the play-ins, the fact that they did, struggle at times in the regular season, that they didn't make it through playoffs, whether or not people are going to take notice of this X7 team. I have been very critical of the NLC last year and into this year, thinking that they're not necessarily as strong of a region. But I think this X7 team is kind of that exception. Like BDXL last year showed us that they can make it through groups, that they can get through the knockout stage and get into the finals and put up a decent finals performance. Why can't X7 do it? So look, I love X7 here. I'm going to be heavy on them. They're also very cheap. The plus 105 is just too attractive for me. My only concern here is that, going back to it, this is the first game for both of these teams. Is this a lower scoring game? We'll take a look at spring and summer from last year, albeit different patches, and, just kind of take a look at how teams performed in day one versus day two, and whether or not that's something that you want to take action on when you're building your lineups. Next game would be Bifrost versus PDS or BDS. Like Bifrost, not a huge dog here. I mean, we're seeing these massive lines in some of the teams. They did not look wonderful today. I don't think that it's necessarily because the team is bad. I think that they were playing one of the best teams in the tournament in Fnatic. I think BDS is right there, but maybe a step below Fnatic. I'm not sure. They could definitely win this game, but I think that both of their strengths kind of align. BDS is just better, so they should win this game. Can Bifrost win it? Absolutely, they can. They're going to have to bring a much better performance than they did today, and that doesn't need to be said. This last game, LDLC versus the Bisons. Do we believe in LDLC? I mean, we talked about the underlying stats yesterday, that they don't necessarily line up with a team that you would view as elite. They don't line up with a team that won the best ERL division of all of them. They just don't line up. But you know what? The thing is, the Bison stats don't either. Yes, they're going to throw out some weird compositions at times, but I don't think that it's any surprise. As that started to happen in the Super League this year, it caught teams by surprise. This was a team that did that, but until you've seen some of these things, you don't necessarily know how to prepare for them or react to them. I think everybody in this group has had a little bit of time to review the tape, think about what the Bisons are going to do, and know that they're just going to bring something kind of crazy out. I liked the way that I felt like the Unicorns of Love reacted to it. It's like, yeah, you're going to do this crazy composition here. We're going to draft a Victor. We're going to draft a Jinx. We're going to draft a Nautilus and a Ornn, and we're just going to scale. We've got an early game jungler to kind of bridge us there in the Volibear, who scales all right. But, the rest of our team, as long as we get through this first, 10, 15 minutes, we're not at a deficit. Maybe we're even in a lead. We're just going to outscale you, or we're going to scale just as good as you are. They were able to get the first two dragons, and, it was just problematic for the Bisons at that point, going into this UL comp. And I think LDLC, being a good team fighting team, can win this game and will win this game. And this isn't going to be a spot where we're going to see kind of, them get upset. They are going to get upset at some point in this tournament. They're not winning it. I'm pretty confident in that. But I just don't think Bisons is going to be the team to knock them off. So no, look, we have a fairly kind of chalky game or chalky day. We do have a couple upsets early in in the day that I think are realistic. I think that X7 is another upset that we could have. Some of these other teams, sure, they could come out and they could win. I don't expect it. So take that for what it's worth. This is going to be a light day in terms of pre-betting any of these matches for me. The only thing that I've put out so far is X7. I might do something like a Fnatic, LDLC, BDS, something along those lines of a favorite parlay. Probably comes in, just under like plus 150, plus 175, somewhere in that range. And, put a couple units on that if we can't find any other value. But, let's go back to EU Masters 2021. Yeah, I love fading Carmine. X7 will be the dog chalk. I think both of them are going to take away from the ownership from each other. I think they're going to both be highly owned. I think the easiest way to kind of equate them is they're going to be a lot like Vitality and UOL. But yeah, there's not a lot of other like high profile teams that are that close in terms of the odds. Outside of that, you have the Bisons, you have Bifrost, and both of those teams just didn't look good today. And I don't think people are going to want to go to them. So the ownership is going to centralize around those two teams. But I just don't expect either of them to get, above 35% per se, simply because the other team is going to take away from it. So let's take a look at the spring main event last year, scoreboards. I think we're in 2022, right? Yeah, that's not what we wanted to do. 2021 season. All right, let's take a look at the spring main event. So let's take a look at the scoreboards. As many of you know, I remember this game pretty well. I actually remember what I was doing and everything during this game. I had to run an appointment. Schalke Evolution versus BTXL. BTXL to me was a team that was a little bit overrated. And this was a game that, was a 19 total. BTXL lost this game. They went on to do a pretty good, or be pretty good the rest of the way, where Schalke was not. Carmine, Cream Real Bitis, 16-5. Again, low scoring. Mouse and Mako, a 29 total. Not super huge. 14-9 for UCAM and Illuminar, 23. We got a 30 here from Rogue. This was, obviously a Rogue, a high kill team playing a really questionable team from one of, I think it was the Baltic region. Some of these guys are on different teams now. MRSA obviously is up in the LEC. This team was good for the region. They were typically a bloody team, so no surprise that this one went over 30. And then we had Misfits Premier versus G2 Arctic, a 17-30 smash. So you can see only two of these games went over the 29.5 totals that we're seeing right now. As we went into day two, though, Carmine and BTXL, 17-12. Little bit bloodier, not significantly, but this is still a 29 total here. We got the CRB versus SO4, 18-10. Little bit more bloody. Rogue versus G2 Arctic, not necessarily there. If you'll remember in spring 2021, this G2 Arctic team just played absolutely terrible. It's funny that Oscar Innen is on that Fnatic team now because he looked terrible. This entire team looked terrible. They just got smashed throughout the entire group stage, as I recall. VZZ and our boy MRSA were able to upset the LFL Misfits Premier 17-14. We're getting into a 31 total. We had Kick and Anthosis Fermagusta, 38 total. And then big MKers. This was their first game. You can see it's a little bit less. So, we're seeing some of these games on day two be a little bit bloodier as the teams played. Not massively significant, not enough that we can sit here and draw a ton of conclusions. But as we go into the summer, let's take a look and see if that continued. Day one, Misfits and Rogue, 12-8. UCAM and Anthosis Fermagusta, 11-10. Fnatic and Big, 28, 18-10. 12-11. 1923. We did have a bloody game. It happens. Vodafone Giants, Mako Esports. And then Carmine and Mouse, 13-7. A lot of those games look really familiar to what we saw today. Yes, look, it's a completely different patch. The metagame is different. There's a lot of aspects that did not carry over from last year to this year. But I think you're starting to see a trend that these games are not necessarily going to be as bloody as they were in their regional leagues, specifically on day one. So then, we had Movie Star Riders. Movie Star Riders, I remember doing a show in the morning. This was a team that I think came in with like a 24, 25 kill per win. And they came out here, 21-11. So a little bloodier. They were the bloodiest team going into this tournament. So albeit this was their first game, it was a little bit bloodier. PDW and Tricked, 21-7. 22-11, Big and Zero Tenacity. This was their second game. Obviously, this was not their second game. This was their first game, but this PDW team, you see Odie is over on Bifrost. A couple of these guys got pulled from this team and disassembled. Illuminar and Fnatic, 25-8. Again, a little bit more bloody. Mouse and Mako. If you had a part of this game, then you were in a good spot, 31-22. And then Carmine and Vodafone, 16-9, not necessarily there. But, look, what I'm trying to say here is, do you think that there's a trend on day one? I think that there is. And I think that's something that you need to put in the back of your mind. We can't take advantage of it now, but when summer rolls around and we've got EU Masters as we're anxiously awaiting Worlds and we're getting, our fix here, we're betting the unders. We're betting the unders on all 6 of the games, no matter what the stats say. That's what we're going to do. So let's take a look at a couple of these teams and who we need to be prioritizing when we are building some of these lineups. So Gamer Legion is a team that we have not looked at. We haven't seen play. Jinjo is their ADC. He was their primary carry, 33 kill share, 70 kill participation. I'll make this a little bit bigger. So obviously they play around their ADC in wins. I think that's a place that you want to target. But you can see the support is there with a huge 81% kill participation. The jungle is massively involved at 76. I would prioritize those 3 players. I think you could play the mid, you could play the top. The top has a pretty high kill share, not a super high kill participation, but they're a top laner and will allow that to kind of go through. When we're looking at Carmine in wins, yes, Reckless is the primary carry, but, Cabashard is a guy that can pop off. His numbers are not that much different than the Gamer Legion top laner name escapes me. But you can see the kill participation on these teams in the LFL is a little bit more spread out. So, maybe Cabashard Reckless small stack. Maybe you're ADCing with somebody, whether it be Bean or whether it is Reptile, who I don't necessarily know if you want to kind of attack. He had a really good game today, and I think that's going to influence a lot of people's decisions. Who else are we seeing for the first time tomorrow? Let's take a look. I think it's the X7. That's who we want to take a look at. X7 in spring wins. No surprise there. Haru, 73% kill participation, 28% kill share, nearly as high as the ADC. So look, if you believe, like me, that X7 is going to carry some ownership, I do think that Carmine Corp will be owned more than X7. I think X7 will still have some ownership. They're cheap enough that you can do just about anything that you want with any of the heavy favorites, whether it be Fnatic, UOL, any of these. I think that you can actually stack with Haru as a jungle captain. Specifically if you want to play it with UOL. I mean, you could definitely play it with Tempt as well if you wanted, and go ahead and make sure that you get Ruby. But you could do something like Haru, Ibo, Lurox, and then maybe you're doing something like Ruby and the rest X7. So Nada, Kosing, and then you can pick a team, and you kind of get a 3-3 there. I think that's going to be significantly different, but I don't think that you're sacrificing too much from a GPP standpoint. Let's take a look. Let's see if we have any questions. No. So, I mean, that's the long and the short of it. Do you guys have any questions about some of these teams? We've seen them play. We know what we're looking at. I think the big decision that you have to make is, well, there's a couple of big decisions. The first one, do you want a part of that first game? Do you think the Unicorns of Love can win as the favorite? Or do you think that they get upset? Is this game going to be a bloody game? I'm leaning towards yes. Then if you're playing that, how are you going to fit them into your lineup? I think a lot of people will play them with KC. I do think that may be one of the most popular kind of combinations, but I think playing them with X7 is the way to go. And that's kind of a stand that I'm going to make. So let's go back, review these games, let's kind of make a couple predictions in terms of how these teams are going to perform, and we'll call it from there. All right, so this Unicorns of Love game, I think that they do win this game. If they lose it, it'll be a pretty bloody game. If they win it, it's going to be a bloody game. I think this is going to be kind of like a 24-13 type of game. 24-13, Unicorns of Love win that game. I want a part of it. Absolutely some value in fading it, but I think it's going to break the slate as everybody's favorite. Chris Prime would say, the slate's broken. It is Europe. UL breaks the slate. First game tomorrow. Phantasm Gamer Legion. I think that this game has the potential to pop off, but I don't think that it will. This is going to be like a 16-8 game. Gamer Legion takes it. If Phantasm is able to win the game, I think that they do that through accelerating the early part of the game, and they end up with more like an 18-4 type of win. But more likely, what I foresee happening when we're looking at a team like Phantasm and Gamer Legion is, Phantasm, great early game, and my fear is that they get off to a huge early lead. And by huge, I mean they get 3 or 4 kills. Maybe it's around the first Herald. Maybe they get the first blood in the bottom lane. Whatever the case is, they get a couple kills around the map, but they're not able to turn those into anything. They're just kills. Then they start to fall apart, and that was kind of their MO here. Mid to late game, not very strong. Gamer Legion, very strong. They're not good at getting their first tower. So they get those kills to get off to it. I'm sorry, they're not good at getting the first dragon. They're really good at getting the first tower. They get that first tower, and that's kind of where that lead stops. So, look, that's kind of what I'm thinking. In terms of question, yeah, there's absolutely game stack viability, and I think that first game is probably the best one to do it. You won't get as many game stacks with the smaller contests, though, because there's only a 35 max. By all means, it's viable. It could absolutely happen. So that's kind of where we're at in that game. I think this Eska Fnatic game, I think Fnatic comes. They act more like Fnatic. They get some big kills. I think that this is a kind of a romp. I think Fnatic goes for 21, and Eska gets us like 8 or 9. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game too. X7 versus Carmine. I think X7 wins. I think this is like a 17-6 type of game. Going back to the sheet to look at these two teams, Carmine 13-12, a 50% team. X7 20-4. Leagues are different. 19-17, 19-18. this is what this is. Their gold per minutes are similar. Their GDM, I mean, obviously a little bit better for X7. They have more wins. That stat is going to lead into that. The goal difference at 15 in wins, both of these teams take an early lead. The difference is that X7 is just one of the better late game teams that we have. They struggle at getting first blood. They have the worst first blood rating in the tournament, but a good first tower. Now, Carmine, in the play-in stages, if you guys were watching, they struggled, getting first blood in the play-in stages. They were behind a couple of kills, but it was a lot of times those situations I'm talking about with inferior competition, they weren't able to translate those early leads into a lead into the mid game and then into a lead in the late game. Carmine was just very comfortable going ahead and scaling there. First Dragon, they did very well during the season at that. X7 wasn't. So the big thing here with a 33 average game time and these peripheral stats at the beginning, this team likes to scale. So it'll be interesting to see what champions go through. I think Reckless only played Jinx and Zeri. So, X7 is going to have to make a decision on what they want to ban out. Are they going to target ban Cabochard, his Lee Sin, his Aurelia, a lot of those champions that he plays up top? Are they going to let Saken get like a Rise or an Ari? Or are they going to try and take away Reckless's Zeri, who not only is it seemingly his preferred champion right now, but he pilots the champion really good, a lot better than most other Zeris at this point in the game. So we'll see. I still think X7 can win this game. I think that they do win this game. I just don't think it's an overly bloody game. And I think that there's actually a ton of value in just fading this game altogether, since these two teams will be the highest owned on the slate. Bifrost BDS Academy. I think that this game actually has a sneaky possibility of being in the optimal. I think BDS wins this game probably somewhere in the realm of, let's take a look. They were 17, probably like a 17-18, like 17-8, 17-7, something along those lines. A lot of the fights being games that are, or fights that are going to be team fights. And so there are going to be a lot of kill participation. So BDSA might make a good small stack there. And then finally, we've got the Bisons. We've got LDLC. I think LDLC wins this game. I think it looks a lot like the UL game. I think LDLC wins with like 16 to 18 kills. Bisons get 5 or 6. If they throw something out there that LDLC is just not ready for, I think that they can win. And I think that if they do win, it's more like a 16 to 18 kill win even then. So, yeah. I think the first game is the game that you want to target. UL is probably going to be in the optimal. How do you fit them in there? How do you fit them in there while fading KC or fading X7? Not sure yet. I'm going to type out some stuff. I'll post it in the Discords, the couple that I'm part of, and you can get the information there. Beyond that, if you guys have any other questions, you know where to hit me up. And I typically, look, it's not impossible, especially if these games all go under. And you have one just kind of crazy game. I don't know, if Fnatic didn't have kind of that late surge, that LDLC game could have been one that you could have game stacked. I don't think a lot of people did, and that's why you didn't see it. But I think there was some viability there. But yeah, other than that, you can catch me in the esports department Discord. It's free to join. I'm also in the Pay Dirt Discord, which is also free to join. Catch me there, or you can catch me on Twitter, EmerickD4U. If you have any questions, we will be sweating the games tomorrow in the Discords. We'll be looking at bets and lineups right up until lock. You can always check us out here anytime that there is a DFS slate of 3 games or more. You're going to see a Shark Cove episode. So we will be back tomorrow, provided DraftKings has support for EU Masters. Even if they don't, maybe we'll come in, we'll stop in, we'll talk about a couple of the bets, and we will take it from there. But outside of that, hey, thanks for joining, and I will see you guys later.